Welcome into Out of Bounds alongside with John Luck. I'm Brian Berard, and we'll just get right into it here, John, with the Boston Bruins. They've been eliminated from the playoffs as they lost in 5 games to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And of course, we said in the last episode that, well, I said it, I don't know really much about you, but I said that I really don't see Tampa Bay coming up to Boston and taking a game. They actually took both games in Boston, but what do you make of this series here? Do you think that the Bruins, this was kind of fitting for them? Do you think that Tampa Bay was truly the better team, and that's really where the Bruins should have ended?
Tampa Bay, I think, was the better team, but I think the Bruins were expected to maybe make this a 6 or a 7 game series. You're seeing the results on your screen right now. And besides that overtime game in Game 4, the Bruins just didn't really seem in this series really from puck drop. They went since Game 2 without scoring a 5-on-5 goal. A lot of the scoring done on the power play. Tampa Bay was just a lot quicker getting into the middle of the ice, cutting off a lot of the cross-ice passes. And, you can blame a little bit on the officiating, but I think for the Bruins, this is just kind of about growing up a little bit, getting your roster familiar with the whole playoff grind, because it is a mindset playing in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, we saw in Game 1 the Bruins took the 6-2 win, and Tampa Bay looked like a team that hadn't skated in a few days because they, made light work of the first round. And, when you got in that game and you saw that, oh, maybe Tampa Bay isn't quite ready for this one, and then they saw in games 2 through 5, it's, hey, they really are legitimately the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, and we saw that, and you really got nothing out of that top line, Bergeron and Pastrnak and Marchand. They were the only line that really could perform, and if they didn't, this Bruins team really struggled, and they struggled hard. And you even brought up Gionta for a game, he didn't do anything. Donato was brought up, he didn't really do anything. You really needed a little bit more depth on the forward side, but also on the defensive side, you're asking way too much of Zdeno Chara, I think. Even though he's 41 years old, he still, I think a couple years ago, should have been dropped down to the second or maybe even the third defensive pairing. And you saw it that he was just getting overworked. And you also saw a big thing is when Tampa Bay got a lead, they were just like a boa constrictor. They really just suffocated the Bruins, and you couldn't get anything past. That's why it was so huge for the Bruins to get onto these leads. And for every game except for that last game, the first team that scored actually won every single game, and that was the Tampa Bay Lightning. We saw that finally Bruins got out to a 1-0 lead in Tampa Bay, and that was, all right, hey, finally we might be able to get this series back into Boston. And when that happened and they let up that lead, you're kind of expecting to see, like, all right, where's this team that was coming back from these 2, 3, 4 goal deficits in the regular season? And you really couldn't see them because you gave Tampa Bay plenty of time to prepare for the Boston Bruins. But, John, I want to ask you this, in terms of roster, is there players that you might want to see the Bruins say goodbye to and bring in some other players, or do you like where the roster is right now for the Boston Bruins?
Well, I went through the roster today as far as contracts go. Your unrestricted free agents are both Nashes, Rick and Riley, so Rick better just get out of Boston while it's still safe. Tim Scheller, Tommy Ringles, Gionta, Holden, Hudobin. So I think right now, if you're the Boston Bruins, is there anybody that can help the team next year? Because I think they're kind of in this awkward stage right now. They have the youth with DeBrusk and Heinen, but they also have the elder players, your top line players, Pastrnak, Marchand, Bergeron. So I think you have to figure out right now, which way do you want to go? Do you want to go with the younger players? If you do, then maybe you make a Pastrnak or a Marchand available. Because I think after this postseason, after everything that's gone down, I think Brad Marchand is really hurting his stock right now. And if I'm Don Sweeney, I think about maybe seeing what teams would give up for a Brad Marchand.
Well, that was interesting is how the NHL had to tell him to stop licking players, and I don't know if that's really what you meant by the stock, but that's kind of interesting that a grown man has to be told not to lick other men. But
trying to be the spokesperson for the Tootsie Pop, that's all.
Exactly.
How many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tampa Bay first line?
Yeah, well, all right, to each their own, but also in terms of the roster, also you lost Brandon Carlo earlier in the year with that injury, and a lot of people were kind of hit or miss on Brandon Carlo, but I like Brandon Carlo. I think he was, was a good puck-moving defenseman that was also very good on his own defensive end, but I really think that they have to move on from Chara. I just don't really see him as a top-line D. If they've moved him down to, like I said, the second or third pairing, you can probably, get Chara in there and make him be, a usable body. But another person that I would really like to see them move on from is Tuukka Rask. And I know that's going to be hard because a lot of NHL contracts, I know Tuukka Rask is a no-movement clause in there. And Tuukka Rask, I'll give him this. He actually did not play poorly in the Tampa Bay series. There were some couple weak goals, but overall he did not play poorly in this series. And I know a lot of people like to blame the officiating, but that defense in front of him was it was god-awful.
Tuukka Rask and Vasilevsky there for Tampa Bay, they were pretty nose and nose. Rask only gave up 14 goals. Vasilevsky gave up 12. And like you said, I think a lot of it comes down to the players in front of Tuukka Rask, but you also look at some of the goals that the Bruins gave up. I look at that Game 4, no hooking call there on McAvoy. If you go back and watch it, and I kind of watched the game back a little bit, but Brad Marchand actually started skating out of the picture, so I don't know if he was getting ready for a line change or what, but he was basically giving up on the plate. For a lot of these players in the playoffs, you have to be all in for your 60 minutes there. If you are, then I think you give Tuukka Rask a really good chance at winning a couple of these games.
Well, Tampa Bay will move on to face the Washington Capitals as, yes, believe it or not, the Caps have not blown away the postseason as they will finally meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now move on to the Boston Celtics. They had an opportunity to sweep the Philadelphia 76ers. Unfortunately, could not pull off the sweep in winning the second game in Philadelphia, of course, though. Game 5 will be on Wednesday in the TD Garden. So, John, what did you make of Game 4 of that Sixers and Celtics series?
Well, it's about freaking time Brett Brown is a real coach and started his lineup with the best players. It took you 4 games to figure out, hey, this TJ McConnell is pretty good. We should probably start him. McConnell was a nightmare for the Celtics to try and defend. He could keep up with Terry Rozier. He forced the Celtics into some really awkward pick and roll situations, really from inbounding the ball on one end of the court, trying to score on the other side. McConnell was there the entire time, all, 20, 25 minutes. So I think TJ McConnell is only going to get better the further this series go. If it does go further than a Game 5, I think the Celtics are in some real trouble because they were introduced to TJ McConnell. And that's what you see in some of these 7-game series. We saw in Milwaukee, they had Maker come along in Game 3 and 4. They had Brogdon start the game in Game 4 and on. So the further these games go on, the bigger matchups are a focal point.
How much do you worry if Philadelphia is able to take Game 5 in the TD Garden?
I'm going to put the panic meter pretty high. If the Philadelphia 76ers come into the TD Garden, one of the loudest buildings in the NBA, you go back and watch Games 1 and 2, the crowd was a real factor. If Philadelphia comes in and puts the Celtics down by 15 points in the first half, it's going to be very worrisome if you're a Celtics fan because, you're trying to grow into being a Eastern Conference powerhouse, and do that, you have to win at home, which you've done all postseason long. So if Philadelphia comes into the Garden, steals a win, there's going to be some warning flags coming up here for the Celtics and Brad Stevens.
Now, in the other, of course, you're seeing the results of their series right now. And, of course, in the other series here, the Cleveland Cavaliers made pretty quick work of the Toronto Raptors. And is this kind of the status quo we're going to expect to see out of the Raptors now? They're a very good regular season team. And once you get into the postseason, you expect nothing out of them?
Well, I'm going to kind of say this a little bit for my final thought here, but I think a lot of it comes down to the coaching. Dwayne Casey, how does he use the bench? He had Fred VanVleet in during the middle part of the regular season, kind of that 6-man off the bench role. But really, Cleveland is just this team, once they get on a run, they keep going. And with that hometown crowd that Cleveland has, it's very difficult to win. So once Toronto lost the first 2 games north of the border, I knew the series was over. The only question is it going to be a sweep or 5 games?
Now, this is going to be a question that you have to make sure that you're an unbiased person here, John, but
I'm always unbiased, Brian. We've been through this before. I'm a level-headed green teamer.
But you're not, though. So here's the thing. It's more likely than not that the Celtics will win Game 5 at the TD Garden and match up yet again with the Cleveland Cavaliers for the 3rd year in a row now in the postseason. I know the last 2 years in the Eastern Conference Finals, I think it was the first round 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I try and black out those memories when the Celtics lose.
Exactly.
But anyways. Realistically,
how many games can the Celtics win against Cleveland in this series?
I think the Celtics can maybe get 2 games out of the series. I think you can, if the Celtics can take 1 out of the first 2 at the Garden, then I think they can hang around with the Cavaliers. It comes down to a difference of last year's Eastern Conference Finals and this year's Eastern Conference Finals. Last year you had Isaiah Thomas with a hip injury, so you didn't have that healthy point guard. Terry Rozier is coming in now, so I give him the advantage over IT the way as far as health works. Jaylen Brown, he's going to be a legit scorer, I feel like, as opposed to last year when he was just starting to fill into the starter role. He's been a starter all year long. Marcus Morris, Shemi Ojeleye, together they can combine on LeBron James defensively pretty well. And then I think it comes down to the coaching matchup as well, Ty Lue and Brad Stevens. LeBron James has gushed over Brad Stevens, so I think as far as the coaching matchup goes, I give it to Brad Stevens in the matchups as well.
All right, now going back to the Sixers and Celtics series. In Game 5, what do the Celtics have to do to close out the series?
Well, if you're the Celtics, I want to see a little more Horford on Joel Embiid. I feel like in Game 2 and 3, when they got Horford on Embiid, Embiid had to kind of fight a little more. Horford got to the ball a little quicker than Embiid. Also, take advantage of the crowd. They're going to be nuts for an 8 o'clock game on a Wednesday night. I mean, after you get done with work at 5 o'clock, you go to the bar for a couple hours, you go to the garden, you'll be all set and ready to go. And then go on long runs early on. Get the crowd involved. The only way to do that, you go on a 10-0 run, 14-2 run. Remember Game 2 when they were down by 20 or something like that? They went on something ridiculous like a 20-3 or 20-5 run. The Garden was nuts at that point. If you can do that, you're going to walk away with Game 5.
All right, well, we talked about the Bruins and the Celtics, and coming up on the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the Red Sox and David Price, so don't go anywhere. More Out of Bounds right after this. Welcome back to Out of Bounds, alongside with John Luck. I'm Brian Berard. We're going to talk about the Boston Red Sox now as they face off against the New York Yankees starting tonight in a huge 3-game series. The two best records in baseball finally meet up again, John. And, you know, the last time these two teams met, we had some fisticuffs thrown with Joe Kelly and Tyler Austin. But do you expect to see some bad blood again with the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox?
I hope so. That's what baseball needs, a rivalry where you charge the mound and have anger going everywhere. If that's the case, I don't mind watching a 4.5 hour game. But getting back to the on-field product of the Boston Red Sox, this is a big series because this is basically the back end of your rotation. You have Porcello, you have Pomerantz, and of course the future Cy Young Award winner there, David Price, going.
Exactly, yes.
So you had the back end of that rotation going. Meanwhile, you had the front end of the Yankees rotation going. Sabathia, Tanaka, Severino going. So I feel like very important here for the Red Sox bats to try and get some of these pitch counts up very early against Severino and Tanaka especially. I feel like Sabathia, they maybe have a 50-50 shot at, winning the game. But right now, looking at the pitching matchups, this might be a better series for the Yankees.
Well, to answer the first question, I don't expect to see bad blood. I think today's baseball, it's kind of one and done. All right, yeah, we got some spark in there. I don't really expect to see much out of it's just now today's baseball players.
Do you not remember all the garbage that went on last year with Machado and Pedroia?
Yeah,
went on all year long.
Those are older players.
Older players.
They've been in the league for a long time.
Machado's been in the league for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. Anyways, so I don't expect to see any bad blood, but you're right, John. The pitching matchups really favor the Yankees, but I think the offense still favors the Red Sox as they're starting to now hit the ball a little bit more. Of course, they're going to go through their peaks and their valleys and whatnot, but I do expect the Red Sox bats to come out and, as you said, John, get the pitch count up. They're good at doing that. So with this 3-game series against the New York Yankees, of course, 2 would be ideal for the Red Sox. 3 would be the perfect thing. As you see, look at the AL East standings. The Yankees back by 1 game, and pretty much it's now the rest. But, going into this series here, I know it's in May. There's still a lot of baseball left to be played, but do you think that – I know there's a little bit of heightened, awareness of this series, but do you think that might elevate some of the play, or do you think some of the players are going to go, yeah, I know it's the Yankees, but it's only May?
I think some of the players are probably going to have an elevated stance here. You have players like Jackie Bradley Jr., Christian Vasquez. They're in the middle of a skid right now. So breaking out in a series against the New York Yankees where you had that jet stream going out to right, this is a big series for them, and I feel like they're going to treat it that way. The only issue is, we talked about this, I think, last week, where a lot of baseball, it's either a home run or an out. And right now we're seeing Bradley and Vasquez going more in the way of outs. I think Bradley has, a 170 batting average?
They're both sub 200.
So if you can break out, go hit a couple home runs, 3 home runs against the New York Yankees, then I think you look at this series and say, you know what, this is a series I'm going to break out on, because this might be the biggest series of the year, because this could be the turnaround for my season.
if they get like 3 singles in the series, I'd be thrilled to death with them. And you're wanting home runs.
I didn't say it's going to happen. I just said, you know what? If you can go out there and hit 2 or 3
Look,
home runs.
I have not liked Jackie Bradley for the past 3 or 4 seasons now. I mean, he really, when he peaks, it's really good. But when he's in that valley, it's really, really bad. I would love to see them move on from Jackie Bradley Jr. And we talked about this a little while ago in Out of Bounds. Do you get rid of Jackie Bradley just to get rid of him? And I know that's kind of you do that if it's a bad clubhouse guy, but I'm at the point where I go, just get him out of here. And I would love to see them try to get some relief pitching, because that bullpen outside of Barnes and Kimbrel is kind of scary. I mean, Walden's kind of, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Pointer, you don't know what you're going to get out of. You don't know what you're going to get out of Carson Smith or Heath Hembry. I mean, there's some really big question marks. So I'd love to see them move on from Jackie Bradley Jr. I just don't think they can do it, though.
Well, the issue you have with Jackie Bradley Jr., you trade him this weekend, say. What are you going to get in return? You're not going to exactly get the top of the crop here. You're going to get some guy that's a bargain basement guy that pitched maybe 2 innings this season. You want to kind of wait for Jackie Bradley Jr. maybe to figure things out, because when he figures things out, eventually Brock Holt would come back in. You can insert him into the outfield. Then you can afford to trade Jackie Bradley Jr. away. But trading him right now, if you're Dave Dombrowski, would really be an issue.
So you want Jackie Bradley to start doing good and then sit him?
That
makes no sense.
If trading him is the end game, then yeah, because you want to trade him when his stock is the highest.
Well, I think a lot of baseball now knows that he's a person that is going to go through peaks and valleys. And I understand what you're saying is wait for him to start getting on fire, and then you can trade him and say, hey, he's hitting the ball pretty well. But, in return, you're going to say and go, well, that's going to come to an end. I'm not saying trade Jackie Bradley 1-for-1 with someone you can maybe package him with what is left of the farm system that we may have. But to me, that's also an interesting thing is, what to do with Brock Holt and J.D. Martinez and Mitch Moreland, because now you have so many of these people that are going to be in the outfield, and you only have 3 positions, and you have 5-6 guys that are trying to play there. And I know you say, yeah, you keep Jackie Bradley for his defense, and I know defense wins championships, but that's more of a football saying, not a baseball saying. I would just love to see them just get rid of Jackie Bradley Jr. And who knows, maybe you can package Holt with him too, because Holt's actually hitting pretty well right now for the Boston Red Sox. And then that way, you still can figure out how to get more time with Mitch Moreland and J.D. Martinez in there, because great thing, Mitch Moreland's also hitting the cover off the ball right now, and he's a guy that only goes out there and plays once every 3 games because you really have no idea where to put him. I don't want to put Hanley Ramirez as the designated hitter, because when he's the DH, he's head up, somewhere else that,
Where?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's his head up?
And he's not going to really be much of a performer, and we've seen that when he's the DH, so you have to have Hanley playing first base.
But I feel like this was an issue that everyone thought was going to happen at the beginning of the season. You have a bunch of players that can move anywhere generically. As far as the outfield goes, you can have anybody playing any outfield position. Your infielders, they can move around for the most part. Your exception, probably Hanley Ramirez and Mitch Moreland, but everybody else can move around. So it kind of comes to the issue of how many at-bats can somebody get. By the time you get to July and August, I feel like this is going to figure itself out, be it trading someone or you're going to have injuries at some point. Hanley's going to pull a hamstring. Pedroia's still bouncing back, so Nunez, how's that knee going to hold out that he injured in the playoffs last year? So eventually this is going to figure itself out, but right now, you're right, this is an issue because there's a lot of people in the same position that are hitting the cover off the ball.
Well, it's going to be a good 3-game series against the New York Yankees, and also play Baltimore and Toronto and stay in the division. So some good baseball coming up for the Red Sox. So we'll move on. We're going to stick with the Red Sox, but we're going to move on to a little bit more of a specific topic here, and that is what to do with David Price. David Price is 1-4 in his last 5 starts. He has an ERA of 8.22. He has given up, I think, 4 home runs in his last 5 starts. It's been an atrocious going for David Price so far this season. So how do the Red Sox deal with the David Price issue?
This is a really difficult situation because the deal you signed him to, it was something like, 8 years, $217 million, give or take, something like that?
Yeah,
maybe
something
7 years?
Asinine.
But I broke down kind of the salary breakdown here of what he's making over the past couple of years and set to make before he becomes a free agent. We haven't even seen the years where he's making the most money of his deal. That comes up in 2020 through 22, where he makes $32 million a year. You can move him to the bullpen, I guess, but at that point, are you really willing to pay a guy $30 million to be a bullpen guy?
It's kind of like when you pay all that money to Rusney Castillo to play for the Paw Sox.
Right. you could go ahead and maybe put him on the DL, kind of give him a couple weeks to figure stuff out, get away from the team, let him figure his mental issues out. That's another option. But at this point, you kind of have to bite the bullet with David Price. Let him go out there. He's going to probably stink. He's going to probably be your number 5 starter as far as your depth rotation goes. I actually did some math over the past couple of years of breaking down his contract and what each thing is worth. So 2016, he had 35 appearances. You paid him $855,000 an appearance.
I'll take that.
Then he had 17 wins, so that's $1.7 million for every win. Last year, I feel like that was a big issue because that was the injury year where he was riddled with injuries at the start and the middle. He had 16 appearances in 2017, averaged out to $1.875 million, had 6 wins, so you paid him $5 million for a win. This is just a very difficult situation for the Red Sox, I feel like.
Yeah, it's, to me, at this point, you kind of lose faith and you go, all right, enough is enough. And David Price, now, John, I'll ask you this. He has an option to opt out of his contract at the end of the season. If you're David Price, do you opt out of this contract?
Oh, God, no. I'm going to stay in this contract forever. What do I care if the people of Boston hate my guts? I'm getting paid, like I said, $1 million to go out there, throw 20 pitches, get a blister on my finger, cry a little bit to Alex Cora, and go in for the rest of the night, and my paycheck still clears. I'm going to stay with the Red Sox as long as possible. If they want to get rid of me, feel free. Trade me. You can go ahead and trade me for a bag of Cracker Jacks.
I think it's tough to trade David Price because you're asking a lot of a team to eat even a portion of that contract. Because if they try to trade him, that one thing I'm going to say is you're going to have to pay for some of that contract too. And that's going to be really, really tricky to get another team to agree to that.
Not only that, but if you trade him, odds are you're going to have to throw another piece in there. So what do you throw in there? Odds are
JBJ?
Yeah, there you go. Well, a team's going to probably want a hitter that can actually perform, so JBJ's out the window.
Oh.
That was a nice reaction. So what do you give up in exchange for that? Do you contemplate giving up a Devers just to get rid of the contract of David Price? If you give up a good prospect, a Devers, a Benintendi, a Betts for whatever reason, at that
I don't think
point,
Betts is a prospect anymore.
Well, I'm just saying, you go ahead and trade some of these younger players. You trade them with David Price, maybe you can get out of having that $30 million tab.
Well, if you're going to trade David Price and a Rafael Devers or an Andrew Benintendi, you better be getting a lot in return. But, of course, there's been zero speculation of David Price being traded, and I really don't expect any of those talks to really heat up. But the thing to me, and I'll talk a little bit about it more in the final thoughts, is there's going to be one thing that we have to do, and maybe David Price will start pitching a little bit better. And I'll tell you in the final thoughts, that's what we call a tease in television. But it's going to be
figure it out.
It's going to be one of those things where you're going to roll your eyes at it, but it's going to make sense. It's going to make sense. Don't you worry. So at the other side of the break here, John and I will give our final thoughts, so don't go anywhere more out of bounds right after this.
I understand. I know it's not your typical resume.
Okay, well.
But candidate. But I've been working double shifts just to pay for books. I've been raising my 2 little brothers. I'm determined, driven, motivated. Isn't that what you're looking for?
Look beyond the resume and discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org.
Welcome back to Out of Bounds. Alongside with John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. It's time for our final thoughts. So, John, go ahead.
All right, brace yourself.
Oh, boy.
This is a Celtics thought. So every year, of course, you have the NBA awards and you have your MVP, Sixth Man of the Year. So I want to focus on the Coach of the Year because I think this is the year that Brad Stevens has to win Coach of the Year. You look at some of the other competition, you have Quinn Snyder from Utah, which I think may be the biggest threat for Stevens' case for Coach of the Year, and Dwayne Casey, the Toronto Raptors, that just choked their top seed away against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I kind of jotted down a couple of bullet points for each coach. As far as Quinn Snyder goes, they have a great young team. They have Joe Ingles, who kind of looks like Toby from The Office. They have Rudy Gobert. They also picked up Jay Crowder and Ricky Rubio in trades. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is probably going to be the Rookie of the Year. As much as I like Jason Tatum, Mitchell has just done a great job taking the team over. But the one thing that Snyder doesn't have working for him is the fact that they haven't dealt with the ups and downs of the season. They've kind of just been straight going through all 82 games, and they haven't had the injury issues that the Celtics have had. All right, on to Dwayne Casey now. Best team in the East at 59-23. DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, great guys, great all-stars pretty much. They were tied for the best home record with Golden State, 34-7. Great home record. They were only 9 games above 500 on the road, though. So that's an issue because if you're a great coach, you have to go out there and coach in any environment, including the tough ones, Houston, Golden State, San Antonio. Brad Stevens, I feel like, is the coach of the year because you look back at the first 5 or 6 minutes, Gordon Hayward's leg went kaput, literally. Kyrie Irving's knee was destroyed in March and April. The development of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I feel like, were great because at the beginning of the year, you thought Jason Tatum was going to maybe be a 6th man off the bench, but he took over Hayward's spot in the rotation. He's a starter. He's one of the best rookies in the game, probably going to finish second in Rookie of the Year. The out-of-timeout plays, I don't feel like a lot of people give Brad Stevens respect for. And you look at the roster that he has right now, players like Aaron Baines, Greg Monroe, they are important parts to this team. You go back to the Milwaukee series and even the second half of the regular season. He finds a role for every player on this team. And, of course, he had the winning streak back in the beginning of the season of 16 games. So with all those facts right there, Brad Stevens has to, and I think will win Coach of the Year.
And what's his record in road playoff games this year?
Pretty good, Brian.
That's what I thought. Okay. I'm not arguing that he's not, a great coach, but I think the Coach of the Year is LeBron James. No. Okay. Well, we'll move on from that.
I'm going to log on Facebook here. Hold on.
Yeah. Let's go make a passive-aggressive Facebook post about this. All right. Well, as I had previously said, David Price, the saga with him continues, and whether or not you should move on from David Price, whether or not he should take that opt-out clause, look, I'm with you, John. It would be stupid of him not to. I mean, he should stay because if you can go out there and pitch 500 baseball and get paid $1 million or $5 million to start, hey, why not? That's the life. I would do that. But you see a lot of fans and you see a lot of people in the press that just, they're haggling on David Price. They're just so negative and they're just down on David Price. And we figure maybe that'll light a fire under him and maybe make him perform a little bit better. And that has worked beautifully. As, like I said, he is 1-4 in his last 5 starts. The team overall record when he pitches is 2-4. And the last time he faced the New York Yankees had a solid 1-inning performance before having whatever issue that he decided to have that day. So for me, the one thing that you have to do to make David Price maybe pitch a little bit better is the one thing that you probably don't want to do. That's support David Price. Because when David Price knows that he has a fan base behind him, like he did down in Tampa Bay, like he did for a little bit in Detroit, he actually pitched pretty well. And when people actually support him and root for him, he actually showed up and was that dominant pitcher we know that we have come to see of him. I'm not saying that you have to be his number one fan. I'm not saying that you have to root for him to be the AL Cy Young. But maybe if you show David Price a little bit of support, maybe that'll change it because we've seen over the past few years, being negative Nancy on him really hasn't done a thing for David Price. Maybe if you try and change our mindsets a little bit, I'm not saying you even have to want him to do well, but maybe just sit there and be unbiased against him, just have to be a neutral against him, and maybe he'll just go out there and pitch a little bit better because at this point you sit there and you go out there and you go, I know I'm going to get booed. What's the point of even trying to do anything right now? I mean, I'm going to get paid my money. I'm going to get booed. I don't care. And that's that. So I figured maybe, just maybe, if you try to support him for one start, maybe it'll turn around. Maybe it won't. Who knows? But might as well give it a shot, right, John?
I mean, what do you want me to do? Give him the stupid batting helmet with ice cream? Do you want me to be his best friend there?
What kind of ice cream?
I'm partial to strawberry ice cream. I'm on a strawberry kick. Yeah.
Okay. I would if it was vanilla with like some peanut butter and chocolate.
Ooh, peanut butter makes the world go round.
Exactly.
But just getting back to that, David Price wants to get a fan base. How about you actually, I don't know, we pay you $30 million, do your friggin' job.
I know. I keep saying it. You don't have to be his number one fan, but maybe if he knew that there was some support behind him, just maybe, he could go into the 6th inning, just once.
And he chose Boston sports fans for support.
Well, here's the thing. He didn't want to come to Boston, but you were throwing that much money. It would be stupid of him not to accept that money.
And he was stupid and accepted that money, but
well,
whatever.
Whatever, John. If someone threw you $1 billion, would you take it? Of course you would. And who cares if people boo you?
I'm very cautious of how people feel.
I'm sure you are.
I care about opinions, people.
Well, another thrilling episode of Out of Bounds is in the book. So, once again, just to remind you all, you can follow us on our social media platforms, facebook.com/BTDOB. And you can follow us on Twitter at BTVOB. And of course, you can watch this anytime at btvaccess.com and on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, search BTV Access Corporation. So for the final time for John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. Thanks for watching Out of Bounds.